Hello, and welcome to SimCast, the higher education simulation podcast. My name's Lawrence Hill, and I'm the chair of the simulation group in the School of Health Sciences at UEA Norwich.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Jeremy, and I'm the academic lead for simulation-based education at UEA Norwich.
So, a very warm welcome to this Halloween special. Yeah, so Halloween special. And today we are joined by two wonderful guests in Olaf and Barbara. Barbara and Olaf, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Great pleasure.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, very warm welcome to you.
And as you can see, Barbara's had a little bit of a play before the show, and we've already dressed Lawrence up with quite a nasty wound there.
Yes, quite sore. But the reason that we're doing that is because we are talking today about the serious business of moulage and special effects in simulation, and deepening that fiction contract and what moulage and this kind of trauma effects makeup can bring to simulation.
If you enjoyed the episode, please give us a like. Equally so, if you didn't like the episode, give us a dislike, but let us know in the comments why, because we're always keen to improve. To keep up to date with all things sim, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to check that notification bell, and SimCast is available on all popular streaming platforms.
So we've got a little bit of... we're going to get into a bit of a conversation in just a second, but just to sort of set out to the listeners what's going to happen. During this episode, Barbara's going to very kindly give us a live demonstration of... it looks like you've had all the fun and I haven't had any yet. Tony's feeling a bit left out, so he wants some makeup on as well.
Maybe not something quite as drastic, but something we can do within the episode. So a bit of bruising and maybe a fractured nose or something like that.
Yeah.
You can rough me up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
With or without makeup.
Yeah, exactly.
and then hopefully we'll hear a little bit about the origin story to how and why you ended up doing this sort of stuff. So I think probably
before we do that, if you can see on the screen, we've got some great bits of kit with us already. So Barbara, can you just go through a few bits, what they are and how you might have used them?
Okay, so the first one here is like inviscerated guts.
Nice.
Oh,
lovely and sticky and soft. We've had these now for about 7 years, so they last well.
And you just keep them in that greaseproof paper to just protect them?
Absolutely. Okay. Keeps them clean, keeps them dust-free. Because you start getting any dust or stuff on there, you just have to wash them.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't suggest putting them in a dishwasher or anything, but yeah, you can wash them quite easily. We've used that in a couple of scenarios, mostly at airport scenes where people have had nasty crashes and had their stomach ripped out and stuff like that. That's mostly what we've used them for anyway, but they look a lot better when they've actually got blood and bits on them.
So there's kind of the base wound that you then dress up a little bit more.
Absolutely. We usually stick it to somebody, cut a hole in the T-shirt, and then soak the surrounding area with blood. And then on the inside, we'll use more of a gloopy blood. So it looks nice and congealed and really, really gory.
Yeah, right.
So we have that. We have ones where we've just got bones maybe sticking out of an ankle or a leg where they've had an accident.
For a compound fracture.
I mean, they don't look very much when you've got them down here, but again, once they're dressed, once they're attached to the limb, very often if you've got some more makeup that we'll use, some more silicone that we'll take on set, then you can build it up and it doesn't look quite so strange as it does just sitting there on a piece of greaseproof paper. There's flat molds that we do as well, which will do like pustules and, if it's chemical burns that we've done before, we've done that for a chemical company. Again, just rips and tears with people, that they might have had some issues with.
I would just say that these flat molds are film quality molds. This is not the sort of thing you would apply in a general scenario. Not fancy dress, because the time it takes to make these is considerable.
It's just worth saying that you make all of your own molds, correct?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So whilst there are companies that you can buy them from, you've made them all out of a silicone based.
Yeah, because we're happier to do stuff that's ours.
Yeah,
and that we're happy with, and we don't want people to go, oh God, that was really rubbish because it was hard and didn't feel right. So we've been lucky enough that we've been involved, and we were trained by a really, really good makeup artist who makes all of his own stuff, and he did a couple of workshops for us that we'd went to. Not the cheapest thing to do, but certainly the the most effective thing for you to do if you do want to learn is to go to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, and that is actually a really nice segue into talking about essentially, if people are watching this and thinking, do you know what, actually I could really do with, deepening the quality or the moulage that we provide. You two actually operate a moulage and special effects consultancy company, which does not just trauma effects, but also other types of moulage makeup. Is that right?
Yes, exactly that. Yeah, we actually we will, because of my background, we do film work as well as moulage effects for clinical situations or trauma scenarios, mass casualty scenarios, that kind of thing. So what I was saying actually is that these flat molds, once they're applied, they're a perfect blend into the skin. That's why we use them only for films and or technical clinical accuracy where that's required. We wouldn't use these because they are relatively expensive to produce for a mass casualty scenario unless it's actually required.
Right.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. No, thank you.
No, I think that's important too, because actually you tailor the technology that you're using to the learning outcomes that are trying to be achieved, and that is, to simulation educators out there, that is exactly, the approach we would advocate to.
Yeah,
precisely.
Yeah. So what we're going to do in a minute is Olaf and I are going to swap seats so that Barbara can do a live demonstration on me. I think before we do that, obviously, because Lawrence has already been made up, Barbara, can you just talk us through the process? Because we took some footage.
We did, yeah. Basically, instead of using something like this, we've created it on scene, because a lot of the ones that we go to, they'll want us to do maybe 10, 12 people within a very short amount of time. So the quicker that you can do it, obviously, if you've got MTA going on, the better. However, you still want to try and get some kind of quality to it, so that is not just a bit of blob on somebody's skin. So I used something that we use on a regular basis, which is a silicone that is a lot quicker to mix together, and it's called Sculpt Gel.
And it's 2 parts.
It's just 2 parts.
Lawrence said it was like Araldite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which mixed together.
So you'll use something like that, and then you can colour it to the effect afterwards. But if you use that, then you can actually make the wound up as you go along.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. It's easier to fit to the person's face. When you're doing flat molds, yes, they look absolutely brilliant once you've got them done, but they will take longer. And it's almost, you've got to try and perfect that, the edge. You can't have that sort of like rucking up or anything, because otherwise it just looks like it is a wound that's rucked up.
Yeah.
With something like Sculpt Gel, you can flatten it out a lot easier.
Okay.
It'll take a little bit of time to dry it off, but you can smooth it out so it actually goes completely into the skin.
So you mixed up that gel. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yes, it blends.
Yes.
You can. It's almost as good as these. Almost.
Right.
So I guess it depends again on what your time frame is, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
If you don't need that super degree of medical accuracy, but we need to, like we mentioned before, have a fiction contract where a learner thinks, oh, this is a wound straight away. They can see it's a wound, rather than if we don't use moulage, they often look to us as the instructor and say, well, what does the leg look like? Or what does, what
Absolutely.
can I see? So that gives that
how long would it take you
realism.
to describe what you can see immediately? And it's that instant, yes, I see it.
Yeah. So that took about 10 minutes, didn't it?
So you started off mixing up exactly. So you started off mixing up the silicone, and then you started to kind of sculpt the wound on the head.
You wanted a gash, so we gave you a gash. But with waiting, you wouldn't let me do it without the makeup. So I had to use the makeup. So with doing that, then obviously you've got to let it go off a little bit to get a bit tacky, so you can start making a bit of a hole in your head, and not just sort of thinking, well, if I leave it to dry, it's just going to be this solid bit. So you've got to play with it a little bit. You can do whatever you like with your imagination,
And you were using basic tools, weren't you? A tongue depressor to start with, just to form the actual sort of incision, and then some
clay. They're just basically just clay tools,
just to get a little bit more of that detail in.
Again, it doesn't have to be expensive. You just go with it. You just can play to your heart's content. If you're somebody that liked playing with plasticine when you were a child, you'll love doing this.
Yeah.
or any kind of background or experience with makeup to a degree, which I mean,
that's how mine would look going out on a Friday night.
We don't have any of that. But you were blending it in with a normal makeup sponge,
Yep.
and then what did you say? The sort of fabric you get, the material you get out of a fish
tank filter.
Yeah, fish tank filters.
Fish tank filters, yeah.
It's great for stippling and scrapes.
Absolutely.
And
You can get some really coarse ones, which you could do like gravel rash with, which are the black ones, aren't they? The coarse ones.
Mm-hmm.
You get really fine ones.
Yeah.
So you adapt it as you go along. You find what you need as part of your little
with
tool
experience.
set. Yeah, it has to be the experience
And
of doing
it
it.
looks great. It looks really authentic. But bearing in mind it was 10 minutes, it looks fantastic.
Amazing in
Lawrence,
10 minutes.
you're gonna keep it on for your kids when you get home.
I'm going to keep it on. Yeah, until as long as possible. I've got a team meeting to go to after this. I'll turn up to that.
Right. Okay. So I think probably be good if I
Yeah.
Olaf and I swap,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
And I really want to hear more about the background to this, because there must be a story here.
Definitely. Olaf can tell you about that. Yeah.
Great. Well, yes, superb. So you're going to give Tony a nice bruise.
Yeah.
And Olaf and I are going to have a chat about
I guess it'd probably
how
be
you ended
easier
up doing
if I
this.
don't have my headphones on.
Probably. I'm going to take mine
okay.
off as well, shall I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
So Olaf, tell me.
We're the ones just chatting then. We'll have gas.
Yeah, we'll just have a bit of a natter. So,
Okay.
can you tell us a bit about how and why you came into doing this sort of thing?
Okay. So a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was an RAF aircraft engineer that used to race motorcycles
Right.
for the Air Force. So,
okay.
So at a reasonably high level.
Yeah.
I shan't bore you with any real details, but I was riding a motorcycle around the Isle of Man representing the RAF. And it wasn't my first time. So a strong gust of wind caught me out going around a very, very fast corner.
Right.
And I ended up breaking my right arm as I peeled into the corner. And then I couldn't slow the bike down because the front brake on the
Operated by your right hand.
was on the right hand. Yeah. So I smashed my right arm to bits. And long story short, I crashed into a metal gate at about 160 miles an hour. I did a great deal of damage.
Wow.
Yeah. So once the surgeons had put me back together as best they could, I had my left wing clipped. And fortunately, I was able to keep my right arm and my right leg as well because they were under threat. Because I was a military guy, I went through military rehabilitation at a military centre called Headley Court, which is in Surrey, South London. While I was there, I was only one of two amputees because this was between wars.
Mm-hmm.
This was 1997, 98, that sort of period. There were only two guys, and we got to know each other quite well, both Air Force guys, and both injured through motorcycle accident. But while we were there, we were going through medical classes one day, and a group of filmmakers came around, and they said, have you guys got any amputees that want to do some film work?
Right.
This is 98. So this is now, yes, by this time it's January, February 98. So yeah, we, Tony and I, these leg amputee, the arm amp, we got to dress up as Roman soldiers, and we got to lie around in a big muddy field, get covered in blood.
In January?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's a tough gig.
It's harsh. Yeah. But it was a bit exciting. We didn't have to do any gym classes for the next couple of days, so that was okay. Yeah, so it was exciting. And but I wasn't particularly well at the time, so I only did the one day, but Tony did about 2 or 3 days. Turns out a couple of years later, it came into screen. It was called Gladiator.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was a big battle sequence at the front of the film.
Oh, wow.
You won't see my fame or Tony's face, so that was that. So I then got rehabbed. A few years later, I left the Air Force and I got a nice R&D engineering job. Fast forwarding, 4 years later, I'd lost my job as an R&D engineer, but Tony was kind of in the film extras scene now, because he'd been doing it for a few years and he really got into it. And he came to visit me at home because we only lived a few miles apart. And he said, have you considered doing any film extras work and some film stunt work, that kind of thing? I said, it kind of interested me. I thought, well, yeah, let's have a go, that kind of thing. So I started doing some extras work, and it was reasonably well paid. It was a lot of fun as well. But he because he'd been in the film industry for a little while, he got invited to Mexico to do 6 weeks of stunt work on a film called Troy.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So he did some work on that, and you actually see him in the film as well. Gets his leg chopped off by Brad Pitt. Yeah,
that's a claim to fame.
Yeah, that's a claim to fame. But in the industry, I could go into it for hours, but I shan't. But you get to meet some well-known people. So
you had a bit of an entrance, yeah.
Yeah. So film work, and then there were a few of us got together, and but only because Tony was in Mexico with the stunt team, and the stunt coordinator at the time said, "Have you guys ever thought about starting up a company? Because we do find it difficult to find people with amputations for inserting into films and doing stunts." And he came back and said, "Do you fancy having a go, forming a company?" And I thought, it sounds like a great idea. So a few of us got together. We started a company specifically to get people with physical disabilities and specifically amputations into film and TV work. It was a great idea, brilliant idea, and it turned out quite well. And one of our first signings in the company was an army guy, a leg amputee, who had connections within the training world. Right. Long story short, we did a demonstration at an army military base in York, a place called Strensall, for a demonstration to present the idea to give realistic casualty simulation to the armed forces as an idea. So we did 3 casualty scenarios for the Ministry of Defence and the Home Office and the MOD.
And I think we can probably show some of the types of injuries I'm guessing you would have used. Would it have been sort of some of the props or I don't know, what do you call them? Are they props or are they prosthetics?
Props. Yeah, film dressing.
Film dressing.
Yeah.
So you'd be using some of that with amputees there, made up, and then in full-blooded, I've just been trodden on an IED, shot with a high caliber round,
that
type
kind
stuff.
of thing. That was 20 years ago.
Right.
So the techniques we used were very, very, very crude. I'm laughing because I know how cheesy they were.
Right. Okay.
Things have advanced considerably since then. So the company grew, and the Army liked the idea, the Air Force liked the idea, Navy liked the idea, the MOD liked the idea. Home Office were chuckling.
Okay.
Thought, we need this.
Yeah.
But this was specifically for the armed forces, and we thought, well, there's a bigger market. And I and a lot of my former military veterans will say that it's not just the military people that require simulation training; it's the people, the first responders, because there's a much bigger market for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one of the reasons we're here today having a chat about it is because we've been recipients of people who specialise in medical trauma, and we want to be able to give something back and say, look, guys, if we have the best possible training, we will get the best possible technicians at the end of the day.
And so, may I ask, where and at what point does Barbara come into this story? Because Barbara is as we can see is a
furiously working away.
and
doing a good job
and
as well.
The craft that goes into some of this stuff. So tell me a bit about how that bit worked.
Barbara and I met around about the time Tony and I started this company,
right?
About 20 odd years ago, and Barbara was full-time employment, but she's been able, through taking time off work and holiday, that kind of thing, to be able to do some film extra work herself. And also, she got very interested in how the makeup side of things was applied, how effective it was. So we undertook some training with our company, with an industry insider, because I'd worked with him on a couple of films as well. Some stuff where I've been in front of cameras with, pretty much every Hollywood actor you can name.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all the A-listers. I shan't mention any, but there was one film, it was called The Wolfman, with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins and a few others. And we had a really good conversation, and one of this guy that trained Barbara and I up, a guy called Stuart, was available for consultation himself at the time, because he wanted to slow down a bit from industry work, so he started training up people himself, and the quality of the man's work is astonishing.
And so you've developed this model business where you were supplying actors and moulage to the military and to training resources. And what do you think the impact has been on learners of having this kind of instant visual cue for them in their learning?
Yeah, good question. The first thing that I would say is that it, particularly if the training is repeated, certainly initially, it gets the fear response out of the way, because people start taking on board what they see. Again, it depends on the quality of the moulage as to how realistic it appears, as to how much of an impact it has on the trainee. So the first thing we usually see is shock. Because they're not expecting
emotional shock.
Yeah. And certainly a physical stop to proceedings. They suddenly realise what they're looking at. For example, I should say actually, it has more of an effect if the people with the moulage applied are amputees, because a lot of the props we brought today are worn by our amputee actors. Yeah. And they can be made to bleed and look like realistic bleeding wounds, for example.
And of course they'll move.
They will move
with the patient.
And you get the emotional reaction from the actor.
Yeah.
And it has much more of an effect rather than applying wounds to a Rossosiani, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's that combination of the authenticity of having a real person there who may have some traumatic experience to draw on to add to that authenticity of the acting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus the instant visual of the gore, as it was described earlier. That has that profound impact. I suppose one of the things that about done now.
Do you know what I was just thinking?
Talking of profound impact,
wearing the makeup gets you into the spirit of it.
The role.
Gets you into the role.
It does. Yes, it does. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I reckon we've been talking for probably about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, I put my phone on so we can get another view, and it's been for about 10 minutes. So that's, again, another 5-10 minute job.
Looks pretty good, doesn't it?
It's knockout. Quite literally.
It's
so good.
Yeah.
I'll stay this side.
Yeah, stay that side.
Put my headphones on and
yeah.
Yeah.
That is so good. So it's that instant impact, isn't it, that we're talking about? It's that instant visual appearance of that person with that injury.
Precisely.
But when combined with somebody who is an amputee, it adds a depth.
I agree.
And I suppose we've talked on this podcast several times in the past about the importance of psychological safety and kind of trying to make simulation as psychologically safe a learning environment as possible within the boundaries of what is reasonable to do. What do you think the psychological impact is, Barbara? It's nice to have you back. Let's get you back in front of the mic. What do you ever give a moment's thought to what the kind of knock-on consequences might be of providing such realistic makeup?
I think it's because we've had feedback from people once we've done it, and we've gone back a second time to go and do it the next year. And they've said, well, actually, I came across something and I didn't panic. I'd seen something before that was similar, even though they know inside that actually it's not real. I think the instant that you see it, your brain is saying this could be real. But when you see it again, perhaps the brain does the other way and goes, actually, you've seen this before, it'd be fine, don't panic.
Yeah. And so there's that, by making this simulation with amputees and screaming and it's hyper realistic makeup, what we're doing is trying to create an environment in which someone has to engage and immerse themselves. But that, there's a definite tension for me, which I'm happy to explore further, because I don't think that you can have that same impact. You've got blood all over the inside of your mug.
I know. But a swig of coffee in it.
So you can't make this learning experience completely psychologically safe. And in fact, what you're doing by this level of immersion is trying to get that initial reaction from people. So this is an interesting one.
I'm thinking straight away of our learner groups. So we primarily teach healthcare students, either in their first, second, or third year of their degree program. And I'm thinking this is a second or third year.
I imagine it would have to be a more advanced student, without a doubt, because I've done this before on junior medics. I've been thrown up on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
and that's part of the psychological reaction. That's the emotional reaction.
There has to be some conditioning in there first.
Do you, just out of interest, do you do anything? We've got visual effect here. Do you do anything with smell?
Not smell, but pyros, potentially explosive stuff, fire in the background, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So one of the things that you said, and it sort of relates back about pyros, was and about how this kind of level of immersion probably needs a bit of conditioning in order to make it less scary. Yeah. But just one of the things you said, but with the boot, to add that depth of realism, you'd light a cigarette and pop it in. And then I think you said...
Just for a chuckle. Yeah.
For a chuckle.
Smoking post explosion.
And I think that kind of speaks to a level of training, but also of cultural immersion in a military setting, perhaps with an element of black humour that's already there. Like the idea that a smoking limb is there for a chuckle is probably
also
something...
We've talked about the importance of fun and play in simulation as well. If we're up in the ante in terms of believability and realism, that safety can be brought in back again with a little bit of fun and play within context.
Yeah, but also you can have very serious games, can't you? Anyone that's ever played like a board game with a family knows that it's what starts off as a game of fun ends up being really serious, and you learn about the people that you play with when you play it.
Can I just come back to a point that you made about being very visually real?
Yeah.
So Barbara, you've done some bruising and a kind of a fractured nose on me. Mm-hmm. What are some of the common mistakes people make when they try something like this and it becomes a little bit Halloween-y? How do you make sure you keep that realism?
I think you can't go over the top. You've got to go over the top to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But you can't go over the top. You've got to leave a little bit there. And I think, I looked at loads and loads of things on, looked up Google. I mean, if anybody had been looking, they might have thought, oh, what's she looking at? Because I'm looking at...
You were looking at gunshots.
I was looking at gunshot wounds. I was looking at...
Looking at real wounds for inspiration.
Real wounds for inspiration, because you have to, because you've got to try and get the colour. You've got to try and people who are studying anatomy, people who are doing the paramedic course, they will have that knowledge.
Yeah.
They will they will obviously have been studying that through biology or whatever they've been doing prior, even when you were at school, you were looking at the inside of an eyeball or something. When you're looking at things all of your life that actually
Yeah.
you can then apply to what it is.
So
but you have to look to see the real thing.
What
So
I would
less
like
is
to
more.
add, well, to an extent, yes. But what I would like to add is that, for realistic effect, you have to make the injuries look real.
Yeah.
And making them look real needs a little bit of knowledge and technique, particularly with makeup, because you can get something like a bruise so wrong by using a slightly different technique.
Okay.
But by getting it absolutely spot on with the technique, then it makes all the difference. It's the visual appearance that makes the effect.
But just looking at Tony's bruising there, so like what makes it look to me to be authentic is the natural hollows of the underpinning anatomy of the face is mirrored in where the darker lines appear. So it's a right-handed person that's punched Tony probably with a hook, and actually the bruising is spread. Is this
like a fantasy that you're now living out?
Yeah, it's just one day maybe. I am right-handed, but you can see where the hollows of the eye, and so that knowledge of and that experience of seeing those injuries, on for real, then translates into art imitating life.
So I think it's worth saying as well that if you are listening to this episode on something like Spotify,
it's worth checking it out on YouTube.
It's worth checking it out on YouTube because you do really have to look at these wounds. They are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
If someone is interested in maybe starting off, maybe looking at something like doing some bruising or some simple cuts and wounds and stuff, does it have to be expensive?
No.
I mean, I can see that you're using some high grade quality things. Is there anything that you absolutely would say you have to have, or can it be done on a shoestring budget?
It can, but then that depends on how realistic you want it to be.
Yeah, okay.
So, I've used the colour wheel. That wasn't hugely expensive.
No,
that's lasted me years.
That's probably £10 worth there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's reasonable, isn't it?
It's not mad money.
It's not mad. You just need a few things. I mean, I spent out more on my Illustrator paints because if you're going to be doing that for a film work or you want to,
clinical accuracy,
then you would use those. But these, you can do many more things.
You can pick up these are kind of like a Halloween bruise palette, but this is obviously Ben Nye, which is
it's a good make,
a more reputable make than something you'd maybe pick up on Amazon. You can, presumably you can get these kind of things on Amazon now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you still can.
Yeah,
but if not, there are quite a few. Well, I'll send you some links.
And what about blood? Because I know blood can look.
That's where
really
you can't
fake.
scrimp.
Yeah, okay.
You can't scrimp on blood.
Blood must look real.
Yeah.
We tried making our own, but there was too many wasps came after us.
It worked out well. We still make blood for mass scenarios because film blood is expensive.
Right.
But we only use film blood normally. I mean, that stuff there you got. This
is good just for small stuff.
I've seen stuff before which is bright red and it just doesn't.
You need
look
something. You get different ones, like you have
venous, arterial, all those sort of things. They're all the different bloods.
Okay.
Yeah, gloopy, runny, dark blood. So you get blood that if you've got people and you want it to look a bit more aged, you can have that, which is a slightly different colour again. You can have nice, thick, chunky, what we call jam. Yeah. But that's basically when I was doing your cut, you put some of the chunks in there just to make it look like it's clotting.
Yeah.
Right.
Bit of dirt, bit of
or just the deep bit where it's darker and it's all congealed and stuff like that. So if you were looking to start out to do some of this, and I dare say some people will see some of these pictures and think, oh, that would be amazing for my sim.
Yeah.
A bruise palette or a palette is going to set you back about a tenner. Probably don't go much cheaper unless you want to have to buy it again.
Basic makeup.
Basic makeup.
And that's, I'm guessing, about 150, 200 ml bottle of blood, something like that.
I take my glasses, I don't see.
That's
100 mil.
100 mil.
That's probably about a tenner again, isn't it?
About a tenner again.
I think it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, so we're in a kind of 25 ballpark for the bruising and the blood. And what about some silicone, the Aridite that you mix, the sculpt gel?
The sculpt gel was expensive.
It is expensive. But the
not in the real scheme of things, because again, that's lasted quite a long time. I've had that a few years as well.
Yeah.
So you just have to know which one you want to use. But I can't remember where I got that from. But again, I can look at those kind of things up and send you links.
You steer clear of latex, don't you? Liquid latex.
Don't use latex. Okay. No, it's because of its sensitivity issues.
Got some liquid latex, but we won't use it.
Won't use it. Yeah.
I only got it there just in case somebody particularly wanted to use that. But
a liquid silicone does just as good a job.
I think better.
Yeah.
Okay, better. Excellent.
Nice. So probably circa less than 50 quid, something like that. You could be away with a good basic starter set.
If you want good blood, though, you're going to be looking up to if you had a whole kit which included everything, then you'd be spending about £100.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's if it's part of an organisation's budget, that's probably not out of the way for the level of realism you'll get.
If let's say that we've got people who are like technicians or simulation educators who are working for a university like ours, and you've got potentially 1,000 students to get through, that's where you get into the realms of creating moulds so that you can mass produce.
You can
some kind of wounds.
This is why we did this, because we were using them on films on set, and I've used some in the field when I've had time to put them on. But with those, you have got to spend time.
Yeah.
Again, otherwise it'll just look messy. Mind you can cover it up with a nice little bit of the sculpt gel if you need to. But
again, once you, I suppose the issue is budget creep, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can spend as much as you like, but you do need a minimum set of tools and basic makeup. As Barbara's already illustrated, you can do a good set for £100, I'd say. Yeah, but that's very basic stuff.
But then if you want silicone, that's going to cost you hundreds.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Because you're not going to do that leg out of sculpt gel.
No, sure.
I guess I'm thinking a little bit about my clinical background, which is surgery, and I guess the temptation is straight to go with sort of the trauma and the gore.
Mm-hmm.
But a little surgical wound with some stitches through it would be great as a visual cue for my learners.
Yeah. So you brought some things, didn't you? So you say you can make these kinds of small surgical type injuries or wounds that Tony was talking about, and you've got some bits and pieces there.
Yeah, we've got these. Again, this was in the flat moulds that you can make yourself. You can make that deeper, longer. You can then make it so you can stitch it together.
Yeah.
Because with it being silicone, it's really hard wearing.
It's hard wearing, but we add a component to it to make it soft, like real flesh.
Yeah, okay.
Because silicone's actually fairly hard.
Yeah.
So it's a deadener that you add to it, and then it makes it soft. And even with that sculpt gel, you can have a third component within that to make that even softer. But then that takes longer to set.
And the cost ramps up ridiculously.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That third component is a pricey.
This is
much pricier than the standard.
I had
silicone.
to use that in this.
Yeah.
That looks really pliable, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and that is. It's really.
And you need
soft.
that flexibility in your eviscerated organs
Absolutely.
to make them look and feel realistic.
You were saying that companies were using sausages before this.
Yeah.
Like a Punch and Judy.
Yeah, they were. And it was quite surprising, really, because they were trying to get it was when they were doing their license that they have to do for the airport. So many years they have to reenact something so they can get all the safety gear. And I said, well, would you like to use these? And he said, well, we normally use sausages. And I said, well, health-wise, wouldn't it be better to use silicone?
No, bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. That's a hazard. Raw sausage meat. Nice. Wow. I'd love to know, what is your absolute favourite thing to do? What do you really enjoy doing out of all of the stuff that you've talked about so far?
I like making the moulds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
absolutely.
that. And also when you actually go to an MTA, or if we're working with the military.
Also MTA, just unpack that.
Oh, sorry. It's a mass terrorist attack.
Right. Okay.
So if you go to something, when we do it with the police, maybe for that, and then we'll work with the military as regards if someone's got blown up in the field, obviously, things splattered everywhere. The gorier the better.
Right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the camaraderie within the guys that we work with as well, who've all been, some of them have been actually through it. They've actually had limbs blown off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the guys had his leg machine gunned off by one of his best friends. For example.
Right, yeah.
That kind
by
of
accident,
thing.
obviously.
Yeah, sure.
But it's feeling that camaraderie because they feel they're giving back into and helping the next generation that are going out there.
Yeah.
And you can have a lot of fun with it. You can definitely have a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, and that's why we wanted to bring you in, because actually that at the core of all of this is this principle of educating others, isn't it? Using your experiences, using your skills to make simulation as immersive and impactful as possible.
Well, what I would like to say, because you asked Barbara what's her favourite thing.
Oh yeah, what's yours?
My favourite thing, no joke, is the post-training debriefs and the feedback from the students and what they actually thought about it. And it's quite emotional actually trying to say it. They some of them are in tears because it's such an emotional learning process that sinks quite deeply within them. And some of them are really quite emotional when they give their feedbacks and say it's probably the best day's training they've ever had, which is very, very satisfying to hear.
It's when you know you've hit that sweet spot.
Precisely. Nicely put.
Yeah, because we had some feedback, didn't we, in March from the guys in the TA medics.
Yeah.
They had some doctors and nurses go there as well from Cambridge.
Yeah.
And
Addenbrooks.
From Addenbrooks, some of the doctors and nurses went along from there. And we actually saw the feedback. They sent it to us so that we could see what they were saying. And it was very emotional. They said they were so used to just dealing with mannequins that to suddenly be able to have the feedback from people screaming and lying there and blood gushing and all the rest of it, that they felt they were able to learn more from that than just pretending that someone's screaming, pretending that someone's giving them feedback from what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole immersive process is...
the tourniquet, everything. It was just,
It's what they wanted and that's what they got.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. I think we should think about wrapping this up so we can go and tend to our wounds.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Olaf, Barbara,
thank you so much.
Absolutely brilliant having you on. Thank you for coming in and showing your skills, your expertise, and sharing your story.
It's been an absolute pleasure, to be honest.
Good.
It's been a great experience for us.
It's good.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you for listening in to this episode of SimCast. We hope you've enjoyed it. We will put a link, an email contact if you wish to get in contact with Olaf and Barbara and you're interested in some consultancy around moulage and special effects makeup. But thank you very much. Happy Halloween, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.